There are two massive reveals in The Boys episode 6 titled The Bloody Doors Off, or that is, one massive plot revelation and one incredibly large love sausage. There's also a pretty substantial Frenchie flashback and a whole lot of love for those saucy golden girls. Hey everyone, I'm Brent, the middleman, your middle-aged middle manager in middle America in a midlife crisis, here today with all the things you may have missed in this week's episode of The Boys. As always, please smash that like button if you are enjoying my videos and want a free way to make a stranger's day. You can also subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of my near daily videos and be the first to drop your theories and things you caught in the comments. Okay, with that out of the way, let's get to the good stuff. Frenchie has been at the periphery of the action to some degree this season, and even in season 1. But in this episode, we get the full story about the tragedy that haunts him, as well as how his talent for finding unique ways to take out Soups got him recruited in the first place. We also find out that the night when he neglected his duties while working for Mallory, which led to the deaths of her grandchildren, wasn't because of selfish reasons as MM has always thought. As we see in the opening flashback, he only had a few people he was close to prior to joining the boys, and a member of his old crew, his very own Golden Girls, was dying that night. We also now know why he has been trying so hard to help Kimiko, and while it may not be what ultimately helps him find peace, at least it's a shot. Starlight takes a few big steps in this episode towards becoming a full-fledged member of the boys, getting her tracking chip removed, which is an operation that requires Frenchie's light touch and a really sharp drill, and a sweet hug from Kimiko, who obviously remembers Starlight rescuing her in the season 1 finale. She doesn't get a hug from Butcher, but she does get invited to join them in investigating the Sage Grove Center, which Starlight saw in Stormfront's emails. But we quickly learn that Butcher only wants her there to take the blame if things go sideways, and we all know, things always go sideways. Central to this episode, after some hints were dropped last week, is the full-on reveal of Lamplighter, played by Shawn Ashmore, who is best known for playing Iceman in the X-Men universe, who's working as an orderly at the Sage Grove Center. That's not nearly as shocking a reveal as what's happening in Sage Grove. Basically, Vought is using human test subjects to figure out if they can stabilize the administration of Compound V to adults, reliably creating superheroes. Lamplighter drops a reference to the comics when he says that sometimes they get powers and sometimes they just blow up. This is what happens in the comics when adults take Compound V, which the boys do to help them fight the Soups. While investigating Sage Grove, Kimiko, Mother's Milk, and Frenchie end up in a security room full of monitors. If you pause and look closely, you will see a lot of interesting Soups. One I wanted to point out, besides Love Sausage, who is a character from the comics, is the miniature hero who looks like the same guy we saw literally muff diving in the first episode of the show. Not surprisingly, the investigation eventually leads to Kimiko, Mother's Milk, and Frenchie getting trapped inside the facility, while Butcher, Huey, and Starlight are stuck outside when the test subjects start running wild. This is thanks to Frenchie confronting Lamplighter in the hallway, leading to Cindy's door getting blown off. We can tell immediately by Lamplighter's reaction that Cindy is dangerous, and after a security guard shoots her in the back, we see why he was scared. It turns out that Cindy is the soup Vought used to pop Agent Raynor's head in episode 1, and she gets to pop off this episode. We see that her power even allows her to bend metal, and she lets all the other patients out of their cells. This does beg the question, however, why didn't she just rip her own door off earlier? Anyway, the ensuing death and destruction caused by the Soups who can vomit acid, explode heads, or use their 10-foot-long penis, poor MM, as a weapon is true chaos. It's while hiding in the facility that we learn that Lamplighter didn't realize he was killing children and that Frenchie had a good reason for not being there. We are also shown that Mallory and the boys had dirt on Lamplighter, and that is why he went to try to kill Mallory at her home. We don't see what video he is shown, but in an interview, Shawn Ashmore asked what Lamplighter did that got him in trouble. Apparently, he was getting freaky with underage girls, and the titty committee lighter was intended as a hint towards this. Eventually, the four of them manage to get out of there safely after Lamplighter covers for them with Stormfront. It seems like the only patient that escaped alive was Cindy, who we last see hitchhiking away from the facility. Hopefully, she is going straight to Vought Tower to start popping skulls. Frenchie, MM, and Kimiko have Mallory come to meet them, giving her a chance to get revenge on Lamplighter. But she can see with some help from Frenchie that letting Lamplighter live is a worse punishment than death for him, and it is implied that they are going to use him to get to Vought in some way soon. Things are not any easier for the folks outside the facility, as an escapee causes their van to flip over, leaving Huey with a nasty abdominal wound that Starlight can't cauterize right there. When they head to a nearby road to commandeer a vehicle, a passing motorist refuses to let them take his car, and Starlight ends up killing him. This was pretty shocking, and it was even more shocking to learn that Starlight wasn't even that bothered by it because the guy was in the way of saving Huey. This leads to the first of a couple bonding moments between Butcher and Starlight. Once they get Huey to the hospital, she and Billy end up bonding once again over their mutual affection for Huey, finally having found some common ground. Elsewhere, the Deep is trying to draw A-Train into the Church of the Collective with offers of fresca and real conversation about their relationship, supervised by the head of the church himself. The Deep also comes through on the favor Maeve requested, scouring the ocean with the help of his aquatic friends to find evidence of the plane disaster that Homelander forced her to abandon. It's evidence that could truly ruin Homelander's reputation, but Maeve doesn't look too good either, which means that it's bad news when Elena stumbles across the footage. Maeve explains that she's using the footage to blackmail Homelander into giving them their freedom, but Elena is still horrified. It really feels like Maeve's arc is coming to an end, and I would bet against her surviving until season 3. Finally, anyone who figured that Homelander and Stormfront hooking up would lead to some pretty unhinged moments got confirmation of that courtesy of the criminal they confront in an alley, which combines this show's intense interest in sex and violence in a whole new disturbingly fun way. But a few rounds of hyper-bloody sex only seems to have made Homelander more volatile, not less, especially when he quickly deduces that Stormfront is keeping something from him. Oh, and what has she been keeping from him? Just the fact that she was born in the year 1919, was the first Compound V test subject, and oh yeah, was a full-on member of the Nazi Party and married to Frederick Vought. Those little racist asides she's been making? They're just drops in the white supremacist ocean that is her character, and by appealing to Homelander's ego as the Superman who will lead them, she seems to have him convinced. As far as grand romantic declarations go, I love you with all my heart. How can I not? Everyone I have ever loved is in the ground, and then I found you. We found each other, and neither of us has to be alone ever again, and that is the truth. It isn't exactly You Had Me at Hello, but it's effective enough for them to make out once again as the theme song to the Golden Girls plays. And now the season has truly established its big bad, and she has an unstoppable and unhinged Homelander on her side. But of course, in The Boys, there's always plenty of other badness to spread around. I wanted to end with some cool things I noticed in this week's episode. Let me know what you saw in the comments. There was Maeve casually vaping while watching one of her cheesy coming out ads for Brave Maeve Pride bars, which says a lot about where she's at emotionally, and I predict that her troubles will be over with sooner rather than later. Don't mess with Homelander, leader of the new Reich, and man, that Vought marketing department works quickly. It's hilarious that nobody is interested in the deep stories about talking to fish. It's an amazing ability, but it's so great everyone just cuts him off before he can give details. He is about to tell Maeve about a rowdy group of halibut he was hanging out with, and she just shuts him down. She didn't even want to know what happened, just for the halibut. Did you notice that all Ashley cared about this episode was finding Starlight? She is going to lose even more hair when she realizes Starlight took out her tracking chip. The man Starlight killed was a parent, as we see the car seat in the back seat of the car they stole. The boys love to do this, showing us that the Russian whose face was ripped off was a parent, and talking a lot about Translucent's kids after he was killed. I guess being a parent doesn't exclude you from being an a-hole. At the Church of the Collective building, there are two paintings behind them at lunch. One is of a younger Alistair Adana, and the other is an older man, probably the church's founder, their version of L. Ron Hubbard from the Church of Scientology. I hope that at least one of them has superpowers when Stan Edgar realizes that the church is trying to strong-arm him. Black Noir will be kicking their collective asses. Strippers aren't exactly my brand of Hershey's, with or without nuts, is maybe my new favorite line from The Boys. Thanks for that one, MM. When they take Huey to the hospital, we see a quick shot of a poster with Queen Maeve asking people to give blood. This campaign may have helped save Huey's life. Did you notice the subtle way that Aya Cash blends a bit of a German accent into the last scene? It was really noticeable when she says Berlin and the names Heinrich Himmler and Goebbels. Why was a traveling businessman carrying a GoPro? Was he going to be doing some base jumping after the sales seminar? Well, that's it for this week's video on The Boys Season 2, Episode 6. As always, please let me know your thoughts and theories in the comments. Once again, I'm Brent the Middleman. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.